Hi, I'd like to talk to you about NetSport DNA, our IT asset management suite, designed to deliver a range of tools for the network manager to discover, manage and control all of a school's IT estate. So at the heart of any good network IT management solution, and in particular NetSport DNA for schools, is the ability to identify and discover all of the IT assets across a school or MAT estate. NetSport DNA identifies and discovers all of the hardware assets from PCs and servers to tablets, as well as network devices like switches and printers, and pull those all together into a centralized hardware inventory. As you'd expect, NetSport DNA provides lots of details about each and every device, allowing you to identify devices that need upgrading or refreshing in the future and built into your broader strategic plan. Just in case you have new devices arriving at different times, it also has an auto discovery feature, so it will alert the network manager when new devices have been identified. Once you've got that vision of all of your kit within the network, the next layer is that second big cost for a school, which is the software you use on those devices. NetSport DNA does a software inventory at a number of levels. It identifies all the programs that are installed, within those programs all of the applications. It lists all the hotfixes that have been applied to devices, and then with a nod to GDPR, it looks even further and can identify files of a particular type. A great way of identifying documents that might contain student data that shouldn't be on local machines and back on the secure network storage. Alongside software inventory, of course, is the ability to manage your licensing, both to make sure that schools don't exceed the legal limit of the licenses they own, but also to make sure the licenses they've got have actually been deployed and effectively used. Now, software licensing really comes in two parts when we start thinking about saving money for schools. So one is what's installed, but the second part is who's actually using it. So the application metering component within NetSport DNA allows schools to get a full picture of which software is being used on which devices throughout the day. It's a fantastic way of recognising when renewals come in about which software perhaps doesn't need to be renewed or where additional licenses need to be purchased. Now, alongside application metering is the ability to control, set limits to where applications are used, either by devices or perhaps more practically by time of day. So now we can make sure that applications like Minecraft aren't used during lessons, but are available when it comes to after-school clubs where it might be more appropriate. Once we've got our software and we know how it's being used, the final piece of the jigsaw puzzle is software distribution, the ability to take new packages that the school needs or updates and push those out automatically onto devices across the network. And again, NetSport DNA provides the flexibility to either push when the network manager wants to schedule those updates, or publish those for pull when staff within the school or trust can pull down applications that have been published as available for them within their particular department. That gives us our full ecosystem of software management. Now, NetSport also tries to make sure that our products are as accessible and usable as possible. And with that in mind, the same way we meter and control applications is reflected for the internet. Again, within NetSport DNA, we can identify and monitor all online web activity by staff and students. And within that, we can provide whitelists and blacklists and control access to certain websites, again, by time of day. A great example perhaps is controlling when social media is or isn't accessible to users. Now, as well as that metering, NetSport extends further and says, well, what about print usage? So typical usage, print jobs, average number of pages printed, costs are all captured within NetSport DNA. And following that monitoring of print usage, it also monitors energy usage. Clearly, that's an area where schools can make savings, particularly with desktops that are left on overnight or over the weekend. And inbuilt to that energy and power management is the ability for us to create policies to make sure machines are automatically started up at the beginning of the day, or just as important, powered down at the end of the day. The policies give us extra flexibility to ensure that if a machine's logged in, then the behaviour we apply might be different to one that's left logged out. Equally, it's about those granular details, like making sure that school holidays and public holidays are missed and skipped from the auto startup routines. Alongside those, NetSport is also focused about the practicalities of being proactive, so an alerting component is provided to make sure the network manager can be prompted in advance when conditions meet that might need their attention. Disk space is running low, antivirus software is being stopped or upgraded, or other events that might draw their attention in advance of it being disruptive to staff working. Now, if we think about the bigger picture of being able to identify our kit, our software, who's using it, where they're going and what time of day they're on the devices, we can aggregate all that information back to a central view, which is our activity monitoring, allowing us either to pick an individual student or a device and see a history for a dedicated period of time. Now, all of this is wrapped around with the idea that we need to bring these tools together to empower a network manager to make sure all of this valuable kit is operational 24/7. And with that in mind, there is a range of tools specific for the network manager to use on an immediacy basis. It starts with a full view of all the active online devices, whether that be in a visual sense to see things like who's logged in, how much CPU is being utilised, network activity, to flipping that view to interactive thumbnails where they can see at a glance who's active, who's online, what's going on with those machines. Where they see an issue they need to preempt, they can simply right-click and jump onto a machine with one-to-one remote control, or against a group of machines they can apply things like PowerShell scripts, remote command prompts and more. In our new Spotlight feature, they can select a particular PC, pop open a window and instantly see everything from processes and services and applications running, and more importantly, they can control, stop and start those things to affect any conditions that they might need. To further enhance the security within NetSport DNA, we have a fantastic endpoint security module, allowing schools to either prevent the use of USB devices such as memory sticks on school computers, fantastic for exam season, or to limit the use, perhaps restricting a USB to only be used by when a particular user is logged in. Another useful way of making sure that only staff can access memory sticks on computers. We can also do things like ensuring that only encrypted memory sticks are used within the school, again linking back to our GDPR policy. Fundamentally, NetSport DNA is about being able to identify and manage all different platforms within a school environment. It has its flexibility to be scalable, including inbuilt gateway components for joining schools across a MAT or district back to a central point. It has the flexibility of remote control across local and remote sites, again without the requirement of any third-party services. It's simple to implement, it's simple to use, and most importantly of all, it's low cost, and the functionality of the product is designed to help save money, delivering a really quick return on your investment. Hi, I'd like to talk to you about NetSport DNA, our safeguarding and e-safety solution for schools, trusts and districts worldwide. NetSport DNA provides one of the most flexible and powerful digital safeguarding solutions available on the market. At its heart, it's broken into two key areas. The proactive part of monitoring online activity by children and identifying where they might be placing themselves at risk. And at the second is allowing children or digital citizens to be able to report their concerns or access resources that might provide them support or assistance. So let's unpick those two areas. For keyword monitoring and filtering, NetSport DNA starts within a database of key terms that will identify everything from children that might be at risk of online sexual exploitation, bullying, homophobia, radicalisation and more. Our database has been built up over many years, both from schools, trusted sources, as well as online recognised establishments like the Internet Watch Foundation. Now, having a database of keywords allows us to identify when a child types something that matches that phrase. In reality, we're monitoring what a child types, what a child searches for, what a child might copy to their clipboard. And of course, children don't type in a pure grammatical sense, so the software has to have that flexibility to detect where there's matching patterns that will give us a good indicator of what a child is searching for. NetSport DNA uses the concept of neural linguistics, breaking down the structure of a sentence to look for patterns that match against our keyword database. And as you'd expect, for every school, there's the flexibility to adapt and adjust that sensitivity. Once a keyword has been triggered, NetSport DNA provides the user and the school with the ability to be flexible in terms of how that keyword or group of keywords is actually responded to. At first level, it will capture that keyword, the sentence that was typed, and it's stored within the database. All the keywords that are captured are then presented within a word cloud so that schools can identify trending topics and drill down below each phrase to see the incidents that occurred against it. For more serious terms, Alongside the trigger, an alert can be sent to a designated safeguarding lead or appropriate individual. For more serious terms still, a screenshot can be captured to provide context of what the child was doing, and if needed, a video clip can be captured showing the 30 seconds surrounding the captured trigger point so that the school can see a broader context of where the child was going on their particular activity online. Within the local LAN setting, and local LAN setting alone, where we have PCs perhaps in a library where children might be sharing logins, a school can also choose to capture a one-time photograph from the PC's webcam so they can see the child in question. Where that becomes key is when we start talking about triggers for topics that have an immediacy in terms of response from a school's safeguarding position, self-harm, suicide, and so on. And so it's key that a school has all that context behind it. Now, one of the yin and yangs of keyword filtering is really about how much detail you want to capture versus how much noise and alerts and emails are generated as a response. Now, schools within NetSport DNA have the flexibility to adjust those thresholds, but we always felt that keyword filtering alone wasn't enough. And actually, the real filtering that goes on within a school are the eyes and ears of the professionals. So within NetSport DNA, we go a level further with our new contextual intelligence module. And in effect, what NetSport DNA now says is not only that sentence triggered, but where was that sentence triggered? What PC was it on? Was it in a lesson or outside of a lesson? Was it supervised or not? What time of day was it? Who was the child? Are they a vulnerable child? Are they a child that's triggered similar phrases to that keyword previously in the last week, and so on? And we add all those variables together to provide a risk index, so that where a child perhaps triggers a concerning keyword, but on discovery we see that it's within a PowerPoint document and it's about a research of the topic, the risk index will be much, much lower than a child that perhaps has searched for terms surrounding self-harm 5 or 6 times in the last 48 hours. The risk index allows schools to have much clearer visibility of those children that need immediate support and intervention, as opposed to the broader intelligence that gives indicators of topics that might lead to whole school assemblies or other types of intervention. As well as our keyword filtering and monitoring, we also need to make sure that children, our digital citizens, are empowered to actually report their concerns they might have. So NetSport DNA includes a report a concern feature. From any desktop or tablet device, a student can click the NetSport DNA icon, enter their name, details of their concern, perhaps they're being bullied on a Facebook chat with their peers, provide a document or photographic evidence. They can simply drag the cursor and drop it onto their web browser and it will take a capture of their Facebook session. And most importantly of all, they can then choose which member of staff, the trusted member of staff, they want to send their concern to. As soon as that's triggered, the recipient member of staff is alerted, but as you'd expect, within that there are also mechanisms so that the DSL is made aware if a member of staff hasn't responded within a number of hours, perhaps they're on a school trip, the system will escalate and trigger to somebody else. Once that concern's been raised, the school within NetSport DNA have the ability to add notes and track the history of that concern, building a broader picture. But balancing that report of concern, NetSport DNA also includes a pre-vetted list of approved resources online where children can visit. So as well as having the choice to send a concern to a member of staff, they can also access an online list of resources that support them, whether it's the Samaritans, Ask Frank for Drugs, or other online agencies that they can access. Most importantly of all, it's making sure no matter what the issue, there is a pathway for a child to actually deliver that. In the broader sense, there's lots of subtleties within NetSport DNA. It's that flexibility, the need not to have to pay for a third party to monitor your keyword alarms, because the neural linguistics and the new risk index will actually do that work for you and give you the detail based on context. The fact that it can be used across multiple devices. The fact that NetSport DNA includes a browser-based access for your safeguarding staff without the need to install DNA on their devices. The subtleties to make sure that if a child chooses to access an online resource that's approved about self-harm, in doing so it doesn't then trigger a self-harm alert back. The same for, of course, for our safeguarding staff. So that's NetSport DNA. Safeguarding and e-safety solutions made easy and accessible, simple to configure, simple to identify the children that really need intervention and support, providing flexibility and tools for young people to be responsible digital citizens, share concerns when needed, and for a school to have absolute confidence that they're delivering their statutory responsibility to look after all of their young people and staff within the learning environment. Hi, I'd like to talk to you about NetSupport School, our classroom instruction and monitoring solution that's been at the heart of the NetSupport product range for the last 30 years. So NetSupport is 30 years young. We are specialists in one-to-one and one-to-many remote control, and classroom management has been at the foundation of our product portfolio since day one. NetSupport School is all about taking that evolution of lock, stop and block tools that were designed to control student behaviour in the classroom and move them on to facilitating assessment, learning, interaction and engagement within the digital classroom. At its heart, NetSupport School starts by providing a simple mechanism for a teacher to connect to all of the students within the classroom, irrespective of the mix of platforms and devices that are being used. A teacher can browse and connect to students, have predefined lists of PCs, predefined lists of students, or connect automatically through things like Google Classroom and OneRoster to pull down pre-populated lists of students to make the process as quick and easy. Once the teacher can see the student screens, they're presented with a wealth of features. Now, we're really mindful that sometimes the most important barrier to effective use of digital technology is providing that teacher confidence, where they move from that survival mode to mastery of technology in the classroom. So they can use NetSupport School in either a simplified cut-down view or in a much more sophisticated detail view. They can see the student thumbnails. They can interact with the traditional lock, stop and block of blanking student screens, locking screens to gather attention to the front of the class, or they can communicate and interact in simple ways like messaging and chatting with groups of students. And groups is an important point because one of the key parts of the NetSupport School is the ability to group students within a classroom in a visual sense. It's really important when we think about learner differentiation, or if we undertake certain tasks, we might want to revisit a topic with certain learners within the classroom. The UI of the product is broken down into some key areas. The first of these kind of management features, viewing what a child's doing and having some level of control to make sure they remain on task. So that starts with screen control, internet control, looking at what websites kids are visiting, being able to provide for the duration of a lesson a list of approved websites or restrict their activity. The same for application use. Now, time's the key within the classroom, and often it's the 30 seconds to a minute where teachers are expecting children to follow a task that actually is the real loser in terms of teaching time and pure pedagogy. So with NetSupport School, a teacher can quickly, with a single click, open all the applications they choose on each of the students' machines, launch a website, and of course equally close an application or website when appropriate. So it ensures that students are always absolutely on task. As well as that task management, we can also ensure, for example, that the children aren't printing when they shouldn't be, or often is the case with younger learners, make sure that duplicates aren't being sent to the printer in turn. In terms of exam conditions, NetSupport School ensures that things like memory sticks can be blocked on the fly, so we can lock down that classroom during those testing conditions. In the broader sense, when we've got our children connected and managed, we're into the heart of the lesson, which is about teaching and learning. Within NetSupport School, as well as seeing the student screens, the teacher can quickly project their screen to all students, our show mode. They can show, rather than their whole PC, just a selected application. In terms of showcasing student learning, a teacher can select an individual student screen and share that to the rest of the class. We refer to that as exhibit mode. And simultaneously, they can also show video, which is synchronized across all of the student devices. So that visual interactive is at the heart of what NetSupport School delivers for the classroom. Now, not every classroom is about visual learning. Another aspect is about the audible learning. And with that in mind, NetSupport School has a language lab style feature that allows a teacher, perhaps when the students have their headsets on and are undertaking some modern foreign languages, to be able to actually listen in on student activity, constantly record audible activity for a student. So if they hear a really good pronunciation, they can capture that, save it as an assessment point, or again, play back and share for the rest of the class. So we have our visual and we have our audible learning. Of course, lots of what happens in the classroom is about resources. So NetSport School, as well as quickly launching applications, can drop and deliver an individual document or resource to each student's machine, or it can be more sophisticated and use our handout and collect work mode, where documents can be delivered automatically to students' machines, and at the end of the lesson, when they finish completing their task, they'll be automatically collected back and stored on the teacher's computer for subsequent review. Lots of what's at the heart within NetSport School is also about providing tools for formative assessment. Many products offer the simple baseline of capturing quick feedback. NetSport School has an interactive survey mode where quick questions can be fired to students and visually they can respond on their screens and capture the answers back. Following our group idea, you can automatically group students based on their results. If we want to go one step further, there's a complete testing component built into NetSport School that allows teachers to deliver pre-prepared questions, from labelling maps, dragging and dropping answers, selecting from multiple choice. And all the time they're using that feature, the system will automatically mark and feed back to the teacher, again making sure that time isn't lost. Perhaps the really important one within that set of assessment tools is the Q&A mode within NetSport School. Built around the assessment framework of being able to deliver effective and quick basketball questioning, the concept behind the Q&A mode starts with a teacher having to prepare nothing at the start of the discussion. What they can simply do is ask verbal questions to the students, but capture their responses electronically. To engage with different types of learners, the questioning process can be done on a game show based style. It can be first to answer, team based, or random selection, making sure that no child in the room ducks from the activity. The teacher can simply say, I'm going to ask a question now, which is the largest planet in the solar system? The children have a chance to think and then respond quickly, either quickest to answer. Once the teacher identifies the child that responded first or has been randomly selected, they can ask them to verbally answer before the teacher visually marks correct or false, or more importantly, can bounce it on to the next student to include that delivery of differentiated questioning, or they can also request a peer assessment where other children feed back their validation of whether the child was right or wrong. And the game show style approach is a really important way to deliver quick, unplanned plenary activities to gauge learning at the end of the lesson. NetSport School has a range of those kind of interactive tools, but beyond that, it goes much further. If children are working on their PC, perhaps in open documents, and they're typing an essay or a paragraph about a particular topic that's been taught in the classroom, NetSport School includes an inbuilt keyboard monitor which will allow the teacher to identify what the children are typing, and it will automatically identify when keywords are triggered by the child. A good example, again, thinking of our solar system concept, is that as the children are writing their essay or coursework, the teacher can see and score every time a planet or a different body within the solar system is mentioned, so the teacher can see that they're on task. Now, there's lots of things happening in a classroom. We've already talked about sharing screens and visual content. We've talked about websites that are appropriate to the lesson. We've talked about survey and quiz results. Within NetSport School, it also includes a unique student journal, which records all of that content and builds it together into a PDF document that can grow lesson at lesson during the term time. That is always accessible to the child. It means they can take that home and use that as part of their homework and revision, particularly if a school wants to start developing flipped classroom and flipped learning. It also means if a student was absent, they've got a record of what was discussed, and the teacher can use that in future years to start building additional lesson plans. To aid accessibility, and that is a key in terms of effective use of technology in the classroom, NetSport School also has a unique student toolbar displayed at the top of the screen. It can be hidden if required, but it means there's a simple one-click point where children can access things like a list of which websites they're allowed to access, what documents have been sent by the teacher. They can see visually what the lesson objectives are and the outcomes that are expected from the lesson, the time left, and when younger learners are being encouraged, they can also see visual rewards that are given to the teacher during the lesson. NetSport School doesn't stop at the teacher desktop environment. It also provides supporting apps on iOS for a teaching assistant so that they can monitor visually one or two students that they've been assigned to support during the learning. And for the network manager or IT technician, we provide a tech console that allows that manager to see multiple classes laid out on the screen with thumbnails and schematic so they can see which teacher's managing which students across the network, and where appropriate, a teacher can request help from a technician and there's a visual indicator. That avoids the need to send a child out of class to seek assistance. It also means that the network manager can provide a level of security and control over the devices within the school, including applying policies that will flag machines when certain security features aren't in play. So there you have it, NetSport School. Functionality to make it easy and responsive for teachers to quickly connect to students within a classroom, irrespective of their platform or devices. Functionality to allow them to shepherd and manage students within the classroom, tools to deliver quick formative assessment throughout the lesson, and then extra functionality to support student learning and remote technician support. Pull them together, and that's why NetSport School has been the market leader for the last 30 years.